So listen, I get it. Trust me, I really do. It's crazy, but everyone is telling you to upgrade your mic, right? Buy the shoe, SMB, SM7B. Get the interface. Invest in your sound quality. That's one thing they're going to tell you. And you got to understand, like, people seem to think this way 24/7 when it comes to podcasting. I need to give you the advice of keeping your podcast, that's keeping you and your podcast broke. That's keeping you and your podcast from making any type of income to support not only your needs, but your family's needs. See, the podcasters who are making that 10K, that 30K a month from their shows, y'all heard something funny? Some of them are recording on a $25 mic from Amazon. Some of them are recording on the headphones that they plug in to their cell phones. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. Your equipment isn't the problem. It's your damn messaging. See, you got to have this psychological trigger. And we got to challenge that, that wisdom out there that dominates beginner podcasters in their communities. We got to get to that point, man. We got to. We got to let these audiences know that I'm here. I'm here to help you understand that you don't need all of this heavy equipment to get started. You understand what I'm saying? So just think about that. Just think about that there. And once you think about it, you'll understand exactly where I'm trying to go.
Welcome to Podcast for Profit, the show where podcasters become CEOs. I'm your host, Tony Porter, and every week I'm giving you the strategy, systems, and game you need to grow your audience, monetize your message, and build a seven-figure podcast business. No fluff, no cap, just real results. Let's get into it.
So, hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Podcast for Profits. I'm your host, Mr. Anthony Porter. And if you've been rocking with us from day one, we'd like to welcome you back. Now, if you're new, here's what we want you to understand. I've helped over 150 podcasters, service providers, content creators turn their podcast into a client-generating machine. And I can tell you right now, not one of them succeeded because they bought thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It's just not going to happen, okay? Today we're going to pull the curtain back. We're going to expose the lie that keeps most podcasters drowning in debt, broke, and busy instead of booked and profitable. And I promise you this, by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly why your equipment obsession is actually the prescription that's holding you down. See, nobody wants to admit that we get involved with the shiny object syndrome. See, we'll sit back and we'll look at that and we'll be like, yeah, I need to get that. I see such and such. I see Joe Button with that particular mic. Or I see Gilly with that mic. I see Gilly and them rocking the mini DJI. They got a whole system because they got so many people come on the show. I see Joe Rogan with the same mic that I need to go get. He's got the soundboard. See, that's not what you need to be focusing on. What you need to be focusing on is making sure that your content is solving a problem. It's pointing to the actual audience. So we're going to implement that today. 2026 is no gatekeeping. We're at the end of January, and we need to make sure moving forward that if you've already invested in that, then that's fine. But we're going to work on the content. But right now, for those who are not as invested as you are, you got to understand you don't need to invest in high maintenance, high dollar equipment. We just need to, publish more episodes in the next couple of months. And so you can at least have 6 months worth of good content. And then those episodes will actually help you book more clients. All right. So we're going to break down into 5 parts. The first is why your equipment isn't the problem. Your message is. Second, why expensive gear won't make you sound like an expert. Third, the uncomfortable truth about gear. Okay. The uncomfortable truth about gear as procrastination tool. Fourth, why consistency beats quality every single stage and very early off into the stages. And then finally, the only equipment upgrade you'll actually matters and you'll actually need, which is where most people who are in the podcast game, they tend to fall short. They get caught up. All right. So this is where they get stuck like Gilligan on that island. So if you stick around with me, we're going to get through this and we're going to break it down. Okay. So the actual foundation of my magnetic framework that I want to talk to you about is the it's what I spend my first 2 weeks teaching inside of the podcast Profit Lab. So you're getting a piece of what my $3,000 clients mastered before they even think about recording. Because this is what we do. That's a part of my core program. So I'm revamping that. We wanted to make sure that you understood what you're getting in the long run. So again, we talked about this in the beginning. I told you we're going to talk about it. So your equipment is not the problem. This is section number 1. Your message is. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of people. Most podcasters don't fail because of bad audio. They fail because the message is unclear, it's very generic, and completely forgettable. It's crap. You could have NPR level sound quality. And if your listeners cannot answer who it's for and what do they get out of this within 90 seconds, they're gone. They've packed up. They've left. Turn the lights out. Close the door. Unpack. Remember, if you've ever watched The Kings of Comedy, and Steve Harvey said when the Titanic was going down, he's unplugging everything with Kool and the gang, and they on that ship, and they out of here. Because think about it. They've stayed through the entire YouTube video. They stayed through the entire course with terrible audio because the content was valuable. You bailed on beautiful produced podcasts because they were boring or irrelevant. Not because the audio was terrible. Just didn't understand what was going on. You didn't have a clear message when this thing popped out. So your audience will tolerate imperfect audio for a clear message. So understand this, crystal clear sound can't save weak positioning. Now, authority doesn't come from what you recorded on. It comes from what you say and how clearly you say it. So before you spend another dollar on equipment, answer these 3 questions. You got to take the time out. And this is going to be a pattern throughout this entire episode. Answer these 3 questions. Who is this episode for? You got to be specific. You can't just sit there and say in your particular niche, this is for entrepreneurs. That ain't gonna work. You got to ask yourself this question. What's the one transformation they'll have after listening? And why am I the person to deliver this message? If you can't answer those 1 sentences of each, your mic quality is irrelevant. And I say that to say this because, see, back in the day when I first started, I didn't understand that. So I just was recording and nobody was listening. So COVID hit, stumbled across a course about production. And when I stumbled across this course about production, I really wanted to continue making beats, but I'm still podcasting. And then I stumbled across a video by David Sands. He said that he created his first podcast in his kitchen, no soundproof room, just the kitchen in his apartment with his iPhone and the headphones that came in it, not AirPods, but iPhone. And I was kind of blown away by that. I was like, dang, now he did this and he's right now labeled the king of podcasting. It started, he recorded, he had 0 clients, 0 listeners when he first started. He had no idea who it was for. He just had something he wanted to say. He was working. I think he said he was working Zaxby's. And when he got finished, he would go to his apartment. His buddy would come over. No money, no nothing. They just was going for what they knew to go for. But what he realized is one of the guys that he was friends with had stumbled across an episode that he had pushed out there. And he told him, he said, man, it's not the quality, it's the messaging. So he took the time. He clarified his message, still used the same equipment, same voice, completely different positioning. And look where he's sitting at now. If you don't know who he is, Google David Sands, Social Proof Network, and you'll understand the message clarity inside the magnetic messaging framework is where it's at. It's the first thing that you got to lock in. So that's what we lock in, because without it, everything else is just a bunch of noise with, better production value. Now, here's what you can do. Now that you understand that your message matters more than your mic, let's talk about why throwing money at gear would suddenly make you sound like an expert. Won't make you suddenly sound like an expert, excuse me. And so that leads us into this next section. All right, so we're going to talk about expensive gear won't make you sound like an expert. So if you've watched TV or YouTube a lot, you see the balloon pops. You know how they come in and they bust their bubble, popping in balloons. Let me bust your balloon with this myth that the podcasting industry doesn't want you to know. We got to bust it. All right. There's a myth floating around that if you get a better mic, you'll sound more professional. It's a lie. So you got to have the 3 C's in some situations. And there's a lot of 3 C's, but this particular 3 C's is one that you're definitely going to need. It's called confidence, clarity, and cadence. That's what makes you sound like an expert, not your equipment. What makes someone sound like they know what they're talking about is certainty, knowing their message. So when they don't stumble, using specific examples instead of some vogue concepts. So here's what you got to understand. When you're certain about your message, when you're out here studying and you're doing your research on your podcast, when you understand what's going on and you can tap in, like recently I just told you about David Sands, you can go back and Google that video where he sat down and talked about that. Now he's running one of the biggest podcast conferences in the United States. And the thing of it is like he just recently did a video where he went to visit a gentleman named Brad Lee. And he's asking questions about certain things in Brad Lee's complex, his studio. He's got about 4 or 5 studios that he uses. And he's like, oh, we need to, I got this, but I don't use it like this. So what you fail to realize is my man's is out here learning as he's going. See, professional podcasters sound good on anything, any mic, because they've practiced their delivery. See, they know their core message. They've done the reps. Beginners think by buying a Shure SM7B will make them sound like Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan can go record a podcast on his freaking phone and sound like Joe Rogan because of how he talks. He's mastered him, not what he talks into. And see, your listeners feel like, okay, your certainty, they listen to you and they feel you before they hear your audio perfection. Want to actually sound more professional? Here's what works. Listen, script out the first 30 seconds, word for word. This is where people who get into podcasts seem to fumble. You got to script out the first 30. Record practice episodes. Don't publish them. Just get comfortable hearing your voice. Slow down. Experts don't rush. Nervous beginners do. Use the equipment you already have, but focus on your delivery. That's how you become an expert. See, I recorded my first podcast on a podcast setup that I got from eBay. Mike went out. I bought another one. Guess where I bought it from? I bought it from Temu, whatever it's called. It worked great. But then I said, I need to update. So I had a little situation where I had some extra money and I started investing. But invested in the equipment, my downloads didn't jump. My engagement didn't increase. What actually grew my audience was getting better, delivering my message with clarity and confidence. And that came from the reps. Remember, I said I recorded my first 20. That was the first 20 I recorded before I started Podcast for Profits, which was actually the diary of an entrepreneur. See, I put in the reps, and it's just like playing a sport. You got to put in the reps to become the number 1 player in the world. You got to put in the reps to become the number 1 high school athlete in your class. So those instances where I got better didn't come from retail. They came from me putting in the reps. So this is the delivery masterpiece of the magnetic messaging framework. It's why my Podcast for Profits, or should I say my Podcast Profit Lab clients, spend way more time on message rehearsal than they do on audio engineering. Some of them don't even worry about the engineering. Some of them that I helped in the beginning, what they did was they sent it out. Oh yeah, they sent it out. Some of them had a little money, so they sent it out, let somebody else edit it for them. And this was the audio version. Now that we've gotten into the point that video is here, then you got things like Riverside.fm to where you shoot a podcast and have it up in 20 minutes. What? 10 minutes to record, 20 minutes total. That's thumbnail, description, show notes, hashtags, edits, everything that you need to have long form content along with repurposing content. So they didn't need an audio engineer. Everything was in the software. And so that was the real situation. So let me tell you what's really happening when you obsess over your equipment. Because when you do that, the gear is a procrastination tool. Nobody wants to tell you that the gear is the procrastination tool. So why do I say that? This one right here is going to hit some of you right in the chest, take away that breath that you breathe in and out with. But I need you to stay with me because it's a very uncomfortable truth that most people obsess over mics, mixers, and interfaces to avoid hitting publish. See, they research, they feel productive. You're watching YouTube reviews, you're reading forums and comparing specs. It feels like you're making progress, right? But it's really fear in disguise. The real risk isn't bad audio. The risk is being heard, being judged, putting yourself out there and having people not care. So again, I referenced this interview with David Sands and Brad Lee because he actually asked Brad Lee, he's like, do you read the comments? He said, no. Brad Lee said, no. He said, so you don't read comments? He said, no, they don't know me. He said, I did one time. I had a specific episode on and the person who was leaving me the negative comments didn't like the episode. He said that the show itself was divvying away from the core values. So he unfollowed. This is a crock of crap or whatever he said. And then he said 3 months later, he was back on her. So he was missing that crock of crap that he said. I followed Brad Lee and I love the podcast. He drops in bombs every single chance he get. So if you've already done your research on equipment, it's safe. It's definitely controllable. You can spend months getting ready and never have to face rejection. But here's what happens. While you're researching the perfect mic, your competition is publishing 12 episodes from the iPhone and booking clients. I see this pattern all the time. It's consistently, it's smart. People who stay stuck in preparation mode because starting means being vulnerable. It's not good. See, nobody wants to admit that. So we blame the equipment. And it's crazy that some folk exactly just want to stay stuck. You cannot stay stuck in a situation. If you have a goal of wanting to be a 6 to 7 figure business owner, you got to get out there. Put yourself out there. I recently recorded a live on my IG, and I need you to jump over and follow me on my Instagram at I am Anthony Porter. I recently recorded a live, just went live for no reason. But I talked about something that was valuable. That was the ideal client because nobody knows how to generate a podcast client because they don't know who they're looking for. Now, I'm going to tell you what's funny. I had a conversation with a guy. He's on a podcast in the city. I'm not going to put the podcast name out there. I'm not going to mess up his bag. But we was going back and forth, and I was congratulating him because that's what I do. I see it. I'm supporting my city. If you don't understand, people in other cities, if they don't beef with somebody, they support somebody. And so when I look at Atlanta's out here doing their thing. You look at New York been doing this for years. Cali been doing this for years. Miami, Houston, all of these regions, cultures out the door. So I feel like I need to say, man, I was congratulating him. He was like, yeah, we're going through something right now, but it's going to work out. I said, man, I'm going to keep watching. It is what it is. I support. You my guy. Funny as hell. So I don't need to say his name because he knows when he listens to this episode, he's going to hear, he's going to know. And what is said, it doesn't need to be brought out to the forefront like that. I'm not going to blast the podcast. I actually went to listen to the podcast and just happened to see him on the podcast. So it wasn't because he was on it. It was, I just wanted to hear, I just wanted to support the podcast in the city. So this is one of the ways that you would know that you're in. And I'm sorry for going off on that rant, but it's not even a rant. It's just that we got to learn how to quit gatekeepers sometimes. And so here's how you know that you're in. You spent more time researching gear than recording your episodes. That's when you know you're in. You're in trouble. You have a reason why you can't start. That's how you know you're in. You know you're in trouble. You watch successful podcasters and think, one, I have their setup. And then you know that you're in trouble because we've already discussed it. And then you've rewritten your intro 5, 6, 7, 8 times and haven't recorded it once. So listen, if that's you, stop deadlining. What you need to do is say, this Friday, you're going to record and publish one episode with whatever you have right then, right there, right in front of you. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to publish. Hit the publish button. And so like I told you, I'm sitting there telling you, so I joined this workshop, right? And it was about LinkedIn. I was kind of skeptical because I'm looking at everybody else's profile. Nobody's on here talking about podcasting. And I'm thinking, oh man, I done jumped into this whirlwind. I need to get some things going. I spent a little money, but I wanted to learn. So this workshop, it was live, so you had to be interactive with it. You had to participate. So when they asked me a question, I said, yeah, I probably spent about $600-700 on some gear for my podcast. Sound country is all outdoors. And then they asked me, they said, well, what was your message about? And I'm thinking, I've been put on the spot. So I stood there for a minute. I said, well, it's very simple. Podcasting, who's it for? It's for brand new podcasters who want to turn conversations into currency. He said, as clear as it's going to get. Conversation was over with. And I said, you have no more questions? He was like, no. He said, believe it or not, you are above mostly everybody in here. He said, how many episodes do you have published? So he's looking at my LinkedIn bio that I sent him because this is what I wanted to publish. I just wanted to make sure it was good. I said, right now I'm sitting at about 35. He said, I see you got your link. So he sent it over to one of his people that work with him. And he come back and right in the middle of the workshop, he said, hey man, your content is good. What's your problem? I said, I'm not confident in putting myself out. I can get behind the mic. I can get behind the video. I'm just not confident enough to put my information out like what you got. And that conversation led to me doing an Instagram audit. That led to me doing a Facebook audit. That led to me doing everything. But it also led to me to focus on one particular thing. What problem do I solve? How do I help? And why should they trust me? So inside of that magnetic messaging framework, we call this particular portion the momentum barrier. It's the invincible wall between preparation and publication. And again, in the Profit Lab, we break it down. This is one of those that we have to talk about. We feel like this is very important. So with that being said, there's one thing that I need to do, and I need for you to quit thinking backwards. All right? Quit thinking backwards. So real quick, if you're taking notes, you're actually thinking, okay, I need to actually implement this system. I put together something called the Client Generating Blueprint, Podcast Blueprint 2026. And it walks you through the exact framework I use that's paying my clients, paying me as well, to turn podcast episodes into book discovery calls. I don't even like to call them book discovery calls because they're triage calls. When I triage you, man, I just want to know where your head is at. I'm not trying to sell you anything. All right. So it's a link that's going to be in the description below in the show notes. Click that link, jump in, and let's start getting to the point where you understand how to generate this bread that's going to help you be successful in life. All right. That's what we're here for. Because one thing you got to understand is this: consistency beats quality in the early stages. Here's what podcasters who are actually winning understand. All right. The podcasters making money don't start with the studio setup. That's the least of their problems. They start with the reps. Publishing weekly beats waiting for perfection. And when I say they waiting for perfection, I mean they waiting on the perfection of the sound. And that does it every single time. And I know you're sitting there saying, oh, why you say that? Because skill compounds faster than the equipment ever will. Your first 50 episodes are your training. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I used to say this. I used to say this when I was coaching youth football. And if you didn't watch this year's national title game, both coaches had said something similar but very different. But Mario Cristobal of the University of Miami Hurricanes had said every game they start 0-0, so they're trying to go 1-0. I used to tell my kids when I was coaching, hey, listen, this is a scrimmage leading up into the district play. If we play 10 games and the first 5 is not district and the next 5 or the next 4 is district and then there's one more after that, those 4 games is what I'm building to help develop. You got coaches who are just out here, like right now, I look at things differently than most of these younger coaches. They're about the perception. We look good. We going to do this. We going to do that. I'm glad they think that. But you don't have a system and you can't learn on the fly. So I learned that my message, I learned how to deliver value. I learned how to be interesting. I learned how to call people to action. I learned that from YouTube. I learned that from my school communities that I'm a part of. And that's what you need to be doing. See, think about it this way. Would you rather have 50 episodes with okay audio where you got better every single one, or 5 episodes with perfect audio where you barely learned anything? See, the audience goes with you, not with your setup. You feel me? So when you sitting there, your early listeners become your biggest fans. Can you name me 2 of the top artists, female recording artists right now? I do you one better right now. One of the best R&B groups in America is going on tour. People been starving for this. New Edition has come out of the woodworks and decided all 6 members are it's been very rare that all 6 members have ever performed together. They've done it, but it's been rare. Can you imagine if they waited to find out that their dance steps was perfect versus the audio being put out there? Songs like Candy Girl, Can You Stand the Rain, Any Heartbreak, Mr. Telephone Man, BBD coming out with Poison, Ralph Tresvant, Sensitivity, Johnny Gill's My. Every little step I'm a fan. I didn't become a fan because they had great dance steps. Their microphones look good. They dress well. I became a fan because of the audio. And that's what happens. And when you look at it, man, New Edition has the NE Heartbreak Tribe. People ride for this. They ride us. Beyonce, the Beehive, ride us. The Swifties, ride us. When you look at some of these podcasts, they out here and they generating $1 million deals, $100 million deals. Shout out to Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey. Signing $100 million deal with Amazon, it wasn't because of their microphone. It was because they had a message and they had something to say, and it was very interesting, and people started listening, and they built a tribe. Go back and listen to any podcast with $1 million worth of game, and you're going to hear the same format. Wallow says he's getting out of jail. He has an idea. He's trying to do this. He does this. He starts a bill. They was getting sponsored by Amsterdam. Then all of a sudden you look up, they would Barstool, and then boom. What happened? My God, did I just not see that they are sitting here, and I think it was DraftKings that Gilly's promoting? They didn't wait for the perfect bite. They episode delivered. They hit publish, and the time became that, hey, they was balling by the first episode. So that's what you got to understand. For me, it's simple. I published my first 20. Audio was rough. I rambled. I still trip over words. I script my podcast. But sometimes what I have on the script is not what I want to say. I'll see it. I say, I want to talk about this. So I move on the fly. I've come to being accustomed to that. The equipment is not what made me. It's the fact that I'm looking at something and I'm like, nah, I think they want to hear this in my head. Like I wrote this out, but then I'm thinking, as I get into this is what I want to say. So the consistency framework inside of this magnetic messaging system that we are discussing today, it's the understanding that publishing beats perfection. And it's why Podcast Profit Labs, the clients, the people that I work with, they do this weekly, man. So if equipment doesn't matter as much as what you think, what does? Let me show you the only upgrade you're actually going to need. Well, let me tell you about it. I can't show you. I'm going to tell you about it. Man, it's the system. It's a system. The only equipment that actually matters is a system. And this is where we shift from education to transformation. See, the real upgrade isn't a mic. It's your system. It's a clear recording workflow that beats fancy gear every single time. Most people can't get that in their head, man. And what I mean by a system is knowing exactly what you're going to say before you hit record. Now, I just told you, I love to have my stuff scripted out. I will go over this script 3-4 times. But sometimes when I get into the flow and it feels better for me to say it one way than the other, that's what I do. So I have a template of my episodes, and you should have one of yours. Having a simple edit and recording process makes everything even more efficient. Having a call to action is where it's at. You have something that you're offering, you have value, and you need to know exactly what your call to action is. Mine, Blueprint 2026. It's the client generating podcast blueprint. Simple. We put this in motion. We need you to get into it. So click the link below and grab it. Simple. All right. Now you know why most podcasters quit after 10 episodes. It's not because of their audio wasn't good enough. It's because they don't have a system. Every episode feels like they're starting from scratch. They sit down to record and think, what should I talk about? So that means they haven't done no research. They finish recording and think, now what? They're exhausted. But if you have a system that's repeatable, the repeatable framework for your content creation, your client conversion, podcasting becomes easy and profitable. So here's a system that actually works. Content system, template your episode structure. Hook, teach, see, close. Your recording system, same setup every time, minimal gear, maximum consistency. Conversion system, every episode has to have a clear offer and a call to action. And your promotion system, man, repurpose each episode into 5 to 7 content pieces. Now, I like to go a little bit above because I want you to get everything that you can get. It doesn't get any better than that. I've got people that I've been around that they've recorded episodes on a laptop and a mic. Audio's fine, no amazing, just fine. But they got a system. Each Monday, episode comes out. That's me using the same episode template. Every Tuesday, it's time to sit there and start repurposing Instagram posts, carousel posts. You steady teaching, you steady promoting. I got a buddy that records each episode. He waits till after mine comes out. And it was done on purpose because he said, listen, we going to hit this way. So his comes out every Monday. He records it. Every Tuesday, he edits it. Every Wednesday, it goes live with 3 Instagram posts, 2 emails, and a LinkedIn article. Every Friday, he reviews his DMs. He books his triage calls. Last year, as a side hustle, he made a whopping 37. You think it was because of Mike? It wasn't. He did it because he had a system. Turned each episode into a client. And that's what we do. That's the magnetic messaging framework in action. Your system, it takes you from random episodes, hoping for traction to, strategic content that generates predictable client flow. And that's what we got to have, man. All right? That's exactly what we got to have. Here's the thing. You came into this episode thinking maybe you need better equipment to be taken seriously, right? But in reality, now you know the truth. Your equipment isn't the problem. Your message is not clear enough. Your delivery is suspect. Your consistency is suspect. So you got to have a system. Podcasters making $15K, $20K months from their shows. They're very consistent. They're not doing it with fancy mics. They're doing it with consistency. They don't have to be sitting there. They have a clear message. They have consistent publishing and strategic calls to actions to everything that they're doing. That's the difference between podcasting that's a hobby and podcasting are client-generated machines. So here's what I want you to do before the next episode. Write out your answer to this question in one sentence. This episode is for who? You want to know who it's for? Who wants to do what? It's the transition. So they can have what? That's it. One sentence. Don't record anything until you answer that question. So this episode is for who? I say podcasters who want to generate a 6 to 7 figure income without burnout. That's it. All right. So you got it. Don't be confused. The message is there. The setup, you don't need a $2,000 setup. You don't need to overthink nothing. Just get clear. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't want to figure this out alone. Hey, start by clicking the link below and grab the client generating podcast blueprint. If you're on IG, hit that thing and say, comment blueprint 2020 and we'll get it over to you. All right. Because we want you to understand that we want to build this thing out for you. And yeah, that's where we're at, man. We are there. We are getting ready to go into February. It's Black History Month, podcast month for me. We're going to study. We're going to learn. We're going to get to that point. All right. I'll see y'all in the next episode, man. It's been a pleasure. Don't forget, man, be clear and you don't need expensive gear to master your podcast journey. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Podcast for Profit. If you got value today, share this episode with a creator who's ready to level up. And make sure you hit follow so you never miss the moves we're making. If you're serious about turning your podcast into a business, tap the link in the show notes to join the Solo Empire Network and get the tools, coaching, and community you need. I'll see you in the next episode.